Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Pitt on the road at Florida State. In one of the more fascinating storylines that we see in this football game is the true freshman quarterback from Pitt that goes by the name Miles Heinschel, making his first career start against Boston College over the weekend, and this kid was phenomenal. Now, I'm just going to read you the box score real quick. He goes 30 of 41 for 323 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. When you actually go back and watch what this kid did, it's even more impressive. The ball's coming out on time. The ball's coming out accurately, under pressure, making some really high level throws, keeping the ball out of harm's way. I turned on the film and said, that looks like a 6th-year COVID senior. And he's a true freshman making his first career start. Now he's going on the road against Florida State in this Tony White defense. Now you flip the sides and say, hey, Florida State, can they get their back off the mat? That's the conversation here. I'm going to say this, and I know damn well that there will be some Florida State fans that disagree with this take, but I'm going to say it anyways. I am stunned with the amount of Florida State fans that want to sell stock on this season or just sell off this season entirely. Throw it up, crumple it up, throw it in the garbage can. This is still a very good football team. The loss on the road to Virginia in that look ahead spot on a Friday night, that's inexcusable. Extremely frustrating, especially how flat that team played in the first half. Now, I'm looking at against Miami. I thought they answered some questions. Florida State in the front seven was able to really deal with that Miami run game and that Miami offensive line. Did Carson Beck make some really high level throws in some really important spots that was able to have Miami separate in that game? Yeah, absolutely. And as much as we don't want to do it, if you're a Florida State fan, you got to tip your cap and say, hey, that might be the best team that we see in all of college football. This Florida State team is significantly better than what we expected it to be way back in August. And they have the opportunity to win every single game left on their schedule. And I feel very confident saying that. Is this Florida State team perfect? Absolutely not. Has Mike Norvell made some really big mistakes in terms of how he's run this program and built their roster? Absolutely. I think you've seen some good things from Florida State. I am not ready to completely sell off Florida State in 2025. Fired up to get into this one. Before we do it, as always, Florida State fans, Pitt fans, hey, man, let it rip in the comments section. A lot of different takes you can have on this football game. The amount of support, by the way, has been amazing. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with this Pitt offense. That's what makes this game so fun. I'm looking at Pitt and say, if they get that kind of quarterback play the rest of the year, this Pitt team is going to be a problem, right? The biggest storyline in this game, and quite frankly, the biggest storyline for Florida State rolling through the rest of 2025, how well they can affect the quarterback here. It ain't no secret what Pitt's going to want to go on the road and do. They throw the football they only run the football, I should say, 44% of the time. That's 117th in the country. They only run it for 3.3 yards per carry. That's 110th in the country. This is a very one-dimensional Pitt offense that wants to drop back and throw the football all around the yard. How do you deal with these kind of offenses? It starts with getting after the passer. That's been the biggest bugaboo for Florida State. Biggest storylines, most important players in this game, because I'm looking at this Pitt offensive line and say, number one, it's a little bit banged up. Number two, I don't think it's been all that great to start 2025. How well can Florida State impact the passer with their front four? It was probably the reason they lost that football game on the road against Virginia, but you're starting to see some things that you like. We've already talked extensively about the Desir brothers. What about Amari Williams? Y'all know how I feel about it. I thought it was a real blunder with how they treated Amari Williams in the offseason. Moving him to tight end, moving him to rush off the edge. This dude's an edge rusher. He's got every single trait that you want for a guy that really can impact the quarterback and, quite frankly, a kind of player that Florida State doesn't have. it seems like we're settling him into that position. And I thought he had a couple of reps against Miami that were really damn impressive. If this Florida State defense, specifically the front four, can find guys who can impact the passer at a high level the rest of the year, and if they get better as 2025 goes on, this team all of a sudden becomes really damn dangerous because there are a lot of things that you like, but their lack of ability to get after the passer, which is arguably the most important thing you can do on defense, has been a problem. What happens if they figure that out? I think Florida State fans should be really fired up about it. And you're looking at this game and say, hey, Amari Williams, the Desir brothers, you're going to have your opportunity to get after the passer. How well can you do it? I also want to see Tony White get a little bit better at dialing it up. Part of the sport of football is you're going to have strengths, you're going to have weaknesses, right? And you look at Florida State, a glaring weakness is the lack of ability to impact a passer with your front four. If you're Tony White, you have to realize that and say, hey, we got to get a little bit more creative. There are two ways to get pressure. Number one, having dogs that can just go out and win. Number two, you can scheme it up, dial it up, give some different looks, give some different blitz packages. I would like to see Tony White do a little bit more of that in this football game because you know what Pitt's going to do. They're going to drop back and throw the football. Make sure you impact the true freshman quarterback that's making his first career start on the road. That's where it starts. Flipping the sides here, biggest storyline here. Florida State wants to run the football. Pitt's really damn good against the run. They're only giving up 1.9 yards per carry. That's number one in the country. What are the ways Florida State can have success running the football? It's an aggressive defense. They want to fire their linebackers, and they're really good between the tackles. If you're Florida State, maybe you try to test him where we still have some question marks. Number one, some misdirection stuff, which we all know Gus Malzahn can do very, very well. With an aggressive defense like Pitt, some quarterback draws, some stuff to the perimeter, that stuff can be very successful, especially against the Pitt defense that I don't know if I love the team speed. And so I'm looking at Mekhi Danzy, I'm looking at Jalen Lucas and say, hey, can we get those cats out on the perimeter and force this Pitt defense that's really good between the tackles, but maybe doesn't have a ton of team speed to say, hey, go run, chase, and tackle some of the fastest players that we see in the sport. That's probably where it starts. Secondly, this Pitt defense is going to be really aggressive. They are going to blitz. They're going to play a lot of man coverage. You got to figure out ways to be explosive, which maybe was the biggest problem that we saw with Florida State against Miami. You go look at the scoring drives that Florida State has, 7 plays, 19 plays, 10 plays, 11 plays. What that's telling me is you didn't really find a ton of those, 40 plus yard chunk plays. In fact, Florida State did not have a single play from the line of scrimmage that went over 35 plus yards. With a Pitt defense, they're going to get theirs. They're going to create some negative plays. They're going to bring some pressure. Can you find and get back to finding some of those game-changing plays? That's what Florida State did so well at times against Alabama, did so well early in the season. Can Florida State get back to that in this football game and against aggressive Pitt defense? That's what you're looking for. Getting into the pick, I'll say this, that there are a lot of people that question Florida State's ability to get their back off the mat. I don't think I do. Excuse me. Because what I just saw was a Florida State team that went down 28-3 at home against Miami. Battled back in the fourth quarter. Never really stopped playing. Showed more fight in one quarter of a game than they showed all of 2024. I feel like Florida State has some fight in them. I think there are some unique matchups that Florida State can get after. Look, am I rushing to bet this at a 10.5-point spread? Probably not. Do I think Florida State can take care of business at home and get this thing going back in the right direction? Absolutely. This team feels a little bit different than it did back in 2024. I'll take Florida State to win. I think this is a unique opportunity against a very quality Pitt team to get the ball going back in the right direction, because if Florida State can do that, they got a chance to win a lot of football games, and they got a chance as a program to start moving back in the right direction. And if you lose this football game, then we start having the conversations about Mike Norvell. And I feel pretty comfortable saying that. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.